We have recently gotten this Stay and Play wireless pet fence because we have a very stubborn Great Pyrenees who has jumped our fence that we have put up, and so we put an underground fence in, and he has also figured out how to get past that fence. So we decided to try out this one, and we've had it for about a week, and so far it has kept him in the boundary that we have set. So I'm going to show you how to get this set up and a little bit about what the boundary is going to look like once you get it set up out in your yard. So the first thing we're going to start with is the collar. One thing I will mention about this collar, which is super nice, is that it is a very large collar. So it's going to fit a Great Pyrenees, and there's also more room if you have an even larger dog than that. So first you want to get your collar completely charged, and then you're going to set the static correction level. This is how you're going to do that. So if you take a look at the user manual, your flashes determine what level the static is on. So one red flash is going to be a no static correction. It's going to be a tone only. We want to do the 5 flashes for our Great Pyrenees, which is going to be a medium high static correction. So I'm going to turn the collar on. And if you counted those flashes, there was 6 of them, and that means that it is on the high static correction. And if you're going to change that, you want to push it right after those flashes. So if you see there, it went all the way back to 1. And you want to push this button at least within 5 seconds from the last flash so it accurately changes. The next thing you want to do is decide where you're going to put your transmitter, which is this unit here. You can really put it wherever you want, and they do provide you with mounting hardware so you can mount it onto a wall. We just have it sitting here on this shelf. If you're planning on the boundary to be in the front and the backyard, you're going to want this transmitter somewhere in the middle of your house so it's even on all sides. So now what we're going to do is form our boundary. So looking at the back of the transmitter, this is your power button, and then this is going to be your high and low boundaries. And what that means is, if you take a look at the manual, if you have the switch on low, if you have the dial on 1, it's going to be a 5-foot boundary all around the transmitter. If it were to be on high, it would still be 5 feet on 1, but if you switch it to 2 on low, it will be 10 feet, and then high will be 20 feet. If your boundary is going to be 45 feet or less from the transmitter, that is when you want it to be on the low setting, but in most cases you're going to be on the high boundary. So we have ours set on high 7. That means we have a boundary of 95 feet. Duke, when he has his collar on, he can go 95 feet all around the house, and if he goes over that, this collar will beep, and then it will give him a static correction if he keeps going farther. Now, if your dog does happen to run and they don't stop, they're going to get a continuous static shock for about 15 seconds, and then it will stop. And then if they decide to come back and re-enter the boundary, they are able to. The collar will not shock them if they return back. So to set your boundary, you can do it by yourself. It's just a little bit more complicated, and it's going to be a lot of trips going in and out to get the perfect boundary. It's much simpler with 2 people. That is how we did it. The way you want to do that with 2 people is have one person inside and one person outside, and you're going to want to start with the transmitter on 8. Then the person outside is going to want to walk to where you want the boundary, and the person inside is going to slowly turn the dial down until the person outside tells them that the collar is beeping, and then your boundary is set.
When setting the distance for your collar, you want to keep in mind that the electromagnetic field is going to adjust on a regular basis between 5 and 10 feet. So keep that in mind when you're setting the dial on your transmitter and when your collar begins to beep. There's been a lot of complaints about inconsistency, and that inconsistency is because it's a wireless fence with an electromagnetic field that is constantly changing, but it's only going to change within the parameters of 5 to 10 feet. Now the fence behind me is 90 feet from the transmitter, and we've got our transmitter set at 6 right now, and 6 should be about 80 feet. Let me show you what this does when we get up to just about the 80-foot mark. So when you're testing your boundary, you want to keep your collar at about the height of your dog. So right here, my collar is beeping, and I am about 5 feet from the fence. So I'm going to back it up, and I'm going to check it again. And I'm beeping right here. And so in my opinion, because my fence because the dog still has 10 feet to the fence, I think that this is a good boundary. Now, one thing that you need to keep in mind is that wherever your transmitter is, you're going to have that distance to the left and to the right and to the front. So just keep that in mind when you're setting your boundary. What I want for my dog is to have the distance in the backyard and not so much the width. Now, if you do not have a physical fence, one thing that you're going to want to do is use the white flags to indicate the boundary of your wireless fence. So when you're making your boundary, wherever this begins to beep, you want to put your flag. And that's going to be in a complete circle around, and they got 50 flags for you to use to set that boundary. Okay, so a couple other pieces of information that you need to know is that when you are putting the collar on, you don't want to get your collar too tight, but you do want to make sure that you get those probes up next to the skin so that when it does begin to static shock, he's going to feel it and it's going to redirect. And then finally, if you are having a lot of inconsistency with your collar and the range from the transmitter, you need to bring your collar back inside, bring it up close to the transmitter, as close as you can, for about 5 to 10 seconds, and that's going to recalibrate your collar, and then you can go back out and you can check your boundary. So since Duke is already familiar with the wired and wireless fences, Duke is not going to go near the fence because he doesn't like the beep and he doesn't like to be shocked. He will roam around the backyard, but he's going to stay within a small perimeter simply because he knows that if he goes too far, then there's going to be a beep, there's going to be a shock, and he's not going to like that. So if you're looking to give your dog the freedom that they deserve, to get them away from being tethered to a chain, then either the wired or wireless fences are definitely a good option.